Hello, folks. Welcome back to this special state championship playoff podcast. It's Sunday night at about 7 o'clock, November 12th. We're doing a fourth playoff podcast. West Hancock made it to their 10th state championship game, so we decided, what the heck, let's do another one. So here we are. My name's Dan Kroll, fourth grade teacher at Interstate 35 and golf coach. I have the same three guys as before. Kevin Wilson lives in Britt, works at Original Saw in the accounting department. Brent Moore, also known as BCMoore. A lot of you football nerds out there know Brent. He works in the IT department for the city of Ames, and then not Bonnie Hiscox, but Jay Hiscox, State Farm insurance agent in Britt, and the head boys basketball coach at West Hancock as well. So I got the introductions done for you. You're welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're going to break down all 7 state championship games that'll be played on Thursday and Friday of this week. The 8-man Class A, 1A, and 4A games are on Thursday, and then 2A, 3A, and 5A are on Friday. So before we get into the first championship game, Jay and Kevin, what do you guys think of the semifinal game against Madrid? West Hancock won that game 39-14. Talk about that game a little bit first.
Go ahead, Jay.
I thought, after the first quarter, West Hancock had controlled that game throughout. I know they built up. I think they were up 39-0 before Madrid put a couple scores on the board. It was a quick 3 and out for West Hancock on their first offensive drive, and then the coaching staff did a good job of kind of seeing what Madrid was doing defensively and coming up with a good plan offensively. Defense looks sharp as ever. Preston Wicker is as advertised for Madrid. He's a really tough quarterback, but West Hancock was able to get after him. And overall, I think in all 3 phases, Coach Sanger would have to be really happy. I mean, obviously, offense was rolling. Defense had a shutout going midway or into the fourth quarter. And then you take another kickoff return back for a touchdown by Jackson Peterson. So special teams answered the bell as well. So I think all 3 phases, can't complain. It was a pretty dominant semifinal win.
Yeah, I would echo what Jay said, and I would add that one thing that probably stood out and made a difference in the game was dome experience.
Yep.
With West Hancock having been there before and not taking away anything from Madrid, but it's been a few years since they've been there, and West Hancock kids have been there, several times in the last few years, and I think, as Jay alluded to, West Hancock did a nice job. They didn't get that score in right before halftime that we thought they might, but they did a nice job of coming out in the second half. And we commented during the halftime break that second drive, or that first drive in the second half, was kind of going to be a crucial drive. Madrid had to make a stop there to get themselves back in the game, and Jackson Peterson put an end to that theory right away when he took that thing back to the house to start the second half. And Jay actually called that off the air. He says, I just got a feeling here that Jackson's going to go. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but Jackson kind of slammed the door a little bit on any comeback right away in the second half. And I think the dome experience really showed through in that game.
I want to add a couple things. That dome experience that Kevin was talking about, that goes not just the game, but just the week leading up to the game. So I know Brady had alluded to it last week, and I talked to Coach Sanger in his office real quick before we had our winter sports meeting last week. And it's kind of nice when the coaches already have a plan in place of what all needs to be, how the week is going to lay out, with it being a different week, game on Thursday. You got a pep rally on Monday. None of that is new, and a lot of that type of stuff can be kind of distracting to a lot of teams that are doing that for the first time in a while, or if that group is going. I know Madrid's played in the dome several times, but that was the first time for that particular group to go. So that's a big deal. And then the other thing I want to go back to on that kickoff return, great run by Jackson, and he's kind of got a knack for special teams in his career. But if you watch back on that replay, there were some beautiful blocks laid out on that. I don't know if he may have got touched a little bit initially, but I know I saw Zach Bukema make a nice block. I believe Bixel made a really nice block to free him up, and then Bixel actually chased him down. Kevin alluded to it during the broadcast. Bixel caught up with JP as he was headed towards the goal line. But I want to make sure you give credit to that whole special teams unit. All 11 guys doing their job.
Yep. And you guys talked about Madrid hadn't been there for a while. 2011 was their last time in the Dome, and that was also a semi game against West Hancock that we took that game 48-38 that we talked about the other day. Brent, you messaged me, I don't know, 10 minutes after the game was over on email and told me what we did compared to the model. So talk about the computer.
Yeah, computer model had West Hancock as a 16-point favorite. Game margin ended up being 25. And after the game, possible rematch, the model actually moved West Hancock up to a 23-point favorite if there would be a rematch. So based on that game, the model has moved West Hancock a little bit higher.
I'm going to share my screen here real quick. One thing we haven't talked about yet, that game briefly, that I think we need to see it actually on video, is Kellen's catch in the second half.
That was a beauty.
You got another angle coming here. Kellen had a heck of a game. Punt return that he fielded at the 2 that maybe he shouldn't have, and ended up getting a penalty out of it, plus about 15 more yards. And he had a good game as well. Good team win for West Hancock, playoff win number 61, and puts us in title game number 10. And we'll, at the end of the podcast, talk about the significance of being in 10 title games. So we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen again. Should be a little more prepared at this point, but I'm not apparently. And it just refreshed my screen. So 8-man is the game before us, and that is at 9:30 in the morning. Bishop Garrigan, which we all know is a conference rival and just a couple, 23 miles down the road from Britt. So Garrigan will play Bedford. I coached against Bedford when I was a head coach at Southeast Warren, and they were in our old conference down here. So somewhat familiar with both teams. Garrigan comes into the game with an 11-1 record. Bedford is 12-0. I'm not going to read everything on the screen to you, but I put some stuff together for each team. Historically, each team has one title, but not since 1985 and 92. Garrigan has more title experience. Coach Wadley was the coach for all 3 of those runner-up teams in 99, 05, and 2016. Fairly even in their total appearances. Garrigan 27 with a 25-25 record now. Bedford 21 appearances, 23-19 record. Their coach that took them to most of those is no longer coaching there, though. What do you guys see in the 8-man game Thursday morning at 9:30?
I don't know a ton about Bedford at all. Garrigan really dominated the second half of their win over Winfield Mount Union. They outscored them, I think, 28-0 in the second half, and the Rother kid had 4 touchdowns all in the second half. So I thought they really wore them out in that second half, and Kevin can kind of allude to the numbers that both these teams have out for football that help with that depth. But yeah, I'm going to pick Garrigan to win just because they're our neighbors to the west, fellow top of Iowa West Conference team. So I'm going to pick Garrigan to win. I know Bedford, they advanced to the championship, I believe, pretty much a last-second field goal, wasn't it? Like 10 seconds to go.
Yep.
They made that field goal. So without knowing anything about Bedford, I'm going to go ahead and pick our neighbors to the west and say that the Golden Bears get it done.
What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I tell you, I think Garrigan surprised a lot of people because I don't think anybody would have picked Garrigan to be in the state championship game. They got into the playoffs and they knocked off some perennial and some highly ranked teams to get there. I think this game could go either way. Jay alluded to the fact that, and one of the things that we noticed and picked up is these 2 teams of the 4 that were in the semifinals, they have a bigger rosters than the other 2 8-man teams did in the semifinals. And I think that might have helped both of them get there just for the fact that they had a little more depth than what Winfield, Mount Union, or escapes me right now who Bedford get. Gladbrook to get there. So I think this is going to be a really close game. I don't know if I could pick the winner, partially because like Jay, I have not seen either one of them play other than the games that were on, in the dome the other day. So, I think it's going to be a real close game. This could be one of those games where the last team to touch the ball wins the game. I think BC can fill us in on what the computer says, but I think Bedford might have a little bit of an advantage, but I wouldn't count Garrigan out by any means.
Brent, what does the computer show us?
Yeah, the computer has been underestimating Garrigan 3 times in a row. So please keep that in mind in everything I say here. Against Remsen St. Mary's, they were an underdog. They won. Against Anita, they were an underdog by 9, won by 10. Against Winfield Mount Union, underdog by 12. They won by 14. So they got a lot of good things going for them. Headline computer model has, I gotta get the right line here. Sorry, Bedford by 8. But keep in mind, the computer has been underestimating Garrigan.
And I will say in that Winfield Mount Union game, what's the Buffington? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He got hurt on a play where, a few plays later, they were probably going to score and take the lead on Garrigan, and he never returned to the game. I thought that was a turning point for Garrigan to add to their lead and then maintain it and win that game. So looked like an upset on the model, but that Buffington kid, the D1 recruit in a 8-man game makes a big difference. So I'm also going with Garrigan. The stat line I'm looking at that makes me sway that way, and it's not just because we know Garrigan. If you look at their passing and rushing, Garrigan's very balanced. 1,389 yards passing, 2,633 rushing. Bedford's pretty much a running team, only 591 yards passing, even though they have 15 of their 30 completions were for touchdowns. If Garrigan finds a way to shut down the run a little bit, I could see that causing some problems for Bedford offensively. So sounds like Garrigan's the pick overall for us here, but it's been kind of a weird year in 8-man with just Garrigan getting there. All right, I'm going to scroll down to Class 1A. Grundy Center. Have you guys ever heard of that school before? Yeah, they've been around a little bit. Grundy Center is in their 5th state title game in a row and their 8th in school history. Bob Eisman sent me a thing the other day. There's only, I think, 5 other schools that have played in 5 consecutive state title games, and they're only the 3rd public school, I believe, was the stat. They will play MFL Marmac, which is the alma mater of Bob and Linda Sanger. So there's some fun Britt connections there on both sides. And then with Kevin, obviously, being a Grundy alum. Grundy is 12-0. MFL is 11-1. Grundy has 4 state titles and 3 runner-ups. So this will be their 8th state championship game. MFL, if you look at their history, this is only their 6th playoff appearance in school history. So they had a lot of not just lean years, but lean decades before they finally broke through in 2010, lost in the first round. And then 2019 through 2022, they lost in the quarterfinals before they finally busted through and got to the championship game. So Grundy, 16 appearances, 34-11 record. And like I said, MFL 6 appearances, 10-5 record, counting the 4 wins they've picked up this year. What are you guys thinking about Class 1A title game?
Go for it, Kevin.
Well, I'm going to go with the hometown Spartans, and not just because that's where I grew up, but I think that the dome experience again is a huge factor for me. They've been there, they've been to this game. They got a taste of it last year when they finally broke through and won that championship. I have a hard time picking against them just for that. The other reason I lean towards them is Colin Gordon. Colin Gordon at quarterback is the real deal. If he has a good game, I don't see Grundy Center getting beat there. I will say MFL. I like the MFL's offense. I think they've sustained maybe a couple of injuries in their semifinal game that may impact their championship game. I hope that's not the case. I hope everybody is healthy and able to go. But I just think that Gordon and Coach Zajac is experienced in this game. He's got an experienced team in this game. I'd have a hard time picking against him, especially with a newcomer to the championship game. I will make one comment, and I'm going to skip ahead here just a little bit. That I wish Van Meter had stayed down in 1A, because I would love to see the Gordon cousins going at each other in this game. That would be fun to watch. Ben Gordon for Van Meter and Colin Gordon for Grundy Center are cousins, and I think that would be a cool matchup to see those two face off with one another. But I'm going with GC all the way.
Jay?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with Kevin and pick Grundy Center in this one. Not going to be easy though. MFL Marmac really impressive in their win in the semifinals. Ran for over 400 yards. They had two quarterback and running back that each were close to 150 yards. Really physical offensive line. Just like what they do, they're kind of a lot like West Hancock. Really physical at the point of attack. Want to run the ball downhill. That being said, I'm going to pick Grundy Center. Colin Gordon is a stud, about 80% pass completion percentage in that semifinal win. He is just a super efficient quarterback that does not make a lot of negative plays, and is always putting his team in position to get something positive for the offense. They've got a ton of weapons on the outside, the Vokes kid, and just a lot of receivers on the outside they can throw it up to. The other key that I think that besides just the dome experience, and we all know Coach Zajac and then the defense coordinator, Coach Conger, are really good at what they do. Got a ton of respect for them. I think one advantage going back to last year is, we'll say it, and they dominated West Hancock when we played them in the championship game last year, and they're going up against a team in the championship game that runs a very similar offense to what we do, and they had a really good plan of attack against us last year. So I think that game plan, there will be a little bit of similarities with their defensive game plan. So I'm going to take Grundy Center. But I think all of the championship games are really, really good matchups. I wouldn't be surprised. MFL, after seeing them live on the video stream, I really like what they did and how they operate and how physical they are. Especially at the point of attack on the offensive line. But I'm going to take Grundy Center.
I just corrected an error I just found. Grundy Centers didn't pass for 674 yards. It was 1855. I don't know where I got that number and wrote that down in the passing categories. I was like, that's not right. So I probably did it over here. I probably messed up some stats here, so we're going to move on from this game a little bit. I don't know if they have identical passing yards, but that could be true. I don't know. And MFL, I think I switched those around.
MFL, they have not passed for 1,800 yards this year.
Let me do this. I put it in the wrong column. 674, 1855. That looks a little more correct. I've spent a lot of time on getting ready for this podcast, and the numbers were starting to get fuzzy for me late at night. So
how do you think Britt feels with numbers, man?
Oh man, he's got a computer program. I put stuff into documents. He's got it all figured out. So
garbage in, garbage out, right, Brent?
Well said.
I'm also going with Grundy in this one. I think we were all a little surprised about the Underwood result, because I think we all did pick Underwood, didn't we, in the semifinal podcast? They only lost to Van Meter by 7 this year and lost in the state title game last year. I was a little surprised, but I was also happy MFL won for the Sanger family, and I'm just looking forward to if West Hancock and Grundy wins, we can have a year where both teams win a state championship and everybody's happy with all the Britt Grundy connections. So, Brent, what's the computer saying with this one?
Yeah, MFL has a lot of high quality top 10 wins. Their last 3 games, they beat number 10 West Branch, they beat number 4 Regina, beat number 1 Underwood. For Grundy Center, they've had an equally impressive path. They beat Pella Christian, underperformed by 5, but they were favored by 28. And then after that, they really outperformed against Dike New Hartford, overperformed by 28 points, and against Waterloo Columbus, they overperformed by 23 points. Headline number from the computer is Grundy Center by 3.
Grundy's +3. That surprises me a little bit, but I could see Grundy winning by several touchdowns. that Waterloo Columbus game, would they play a 7-point game in the regular season?
Mhm.
Grundy and Columbus, then won 42-7 in the semis. So I just deleted MFL's passing stats. I don't know what I was doing there. So just ignore all the numbers up there.
Hey, one last thing to mention with Grundy Center. Anytime you're playing a team a second time, it's always hard. I've always thought, especially in football, when you're playing a team a second time and you widen that margin compared to the first time, to me, that's a credit to coaching. And I know Grundy Center has had a couple of different rematches throughout these playoffs, and going back to Dyke New Hartford and Columbus, and who was their first round point?
Pella Christian. Yep.
Right. So all those teams there, that was the second time around for them. So really impressive for them to do what they did on this playoff run thus far.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's move on to 4A here after my 1A stat debacle. 4A, that game is played at, I believe, 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Lewis Central against Epworth Western Dubuque. Lewis Central comes in with a 10-2 record. Epworth is at 11-1. Look at their points scored and points against. They're 12 points difference in scoring and only 1 point difference in against. Stat-wise, you could call both of those teams fairly balanced in their rush pass. The one that stuck out to me was takeaways. Lewis Central's taking the ball away from their opponents 29 times compared to 15 for Western Dubuque. They both punted about equally and returns 2-4, with Epworth having the advantage there. I like those stats that I put in there just because in a state championship game, sometimes it comes down to an interception or it comes down to a kick return. If both teams are pretty evenly matched. Traditional stuff here, Lewis Central has some pretty recent success. They won the state title in 2021. They lost it last year in 2022. They were in the semis in 18 and 19, the quarters in 20. So a lot of their appearances have been in the last decade or so. Epworth Western Dubuque has 2 titles, 01, 2019. They were runner-ups in 2018. So neither of these two teams are strangers to a state title game, even though maybe on the Epworth side, some of the kids starting didn't play on those teams, but the program itself has some experience. Lewis Central, 18 appearances, 22-16 record. Western Dubuque, 17 appearances with an 18-14 record in their playoff history. What are you guys seeing from this Class 4A state title game that'll be after the Grundy game?
I'll be quick in this one. I'm going to pick Lewis Central in this one. I think they're back to their dominant ways. They're looking good here as of late, and I think them having the most recent dome experience, being runners-up last year, and then of course winning the title in 2021. I think that's advantageous to them as far as some of the players on Thursday being a major part of both those squads from 21 and 22. So I'm going to pick Lewis Central to win this one. I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about either team, so I'm just going to go based off of some scores that I've seen and some recent history.
I would probably agree with Jay. That being said, wouldn't surprise me if we're both wrong and Western Dubuque wins it, because I see this one. You can see that in their stats when you look at the stats. I see this one as a toss-up, really. I think it could go either way.
Gotta pick one, Kevin. Who you picking?
I would give the edge to Council Bluffs, Lewis Central.
Okay. What do you think, Brent? What's the computer showing?
Yeah, it shows, as we talked about last time, there were 4 teams that were really, really close, within two points, based on kind of the blowout wins that were very unexpected as far as I was concerned. Western Dubuque and Lewis Central winning big. The model currently has Lewis Central by 1 point. So again, tight game, very exciting.
Yeah, that's what we call a toss-up. But again, I always throw back to you. You said a couple podcasts ago that even the team that's +1 still comes out almost 80% of the time. So that'll be a fun one. And then I think it comes down to turning the ball over, and maybe an opportunistic play in special teams might be the difference. So I'm also going with Lewis Central in this one. Kind of like Jay said, I don't know a ton about 4A and 5A football like I do maybe the smaller classes, but I watched both of these games, not in their entirety, and I thought Lewis Central passed the eye test a little bit more than Western Dubuque did. Anything else on 4A? Friday's games, we have Van Meter and Central Lyon, George Little Rock. Both of these teams are very familiar with state title games. Both are 12-0 this season. Both have scored 500 plus points, giving up just over 100 each. Fairly similar passing and rushing stats. Central Lyon has 9 more rushing touchdowns, but Van Meter has 12 more passing touchdowns. Takeaways, the edge goes to Central Lyon. Return touchdowns easily goes to Van Meter. They have 8 to Central Lyon's 3. They've both each punted only 18 times this season. And then historically, Van Meter has titles in 17, 21, and 22. Those were all in 1A. Runner-ups in 19 and 20. So this is their let me see. They've been in the semifinals or better every year since 2015, which that's a lot of games in the dome for Coach Trudeau and his staff. One of his assistants is a buddy of mine. He's also the golf coach at Van Meter. So as much as people don't like Van Meter winning, he's a friend of mine. So it's nice to see someone win that, you know. Central Lyon has 4 state titles if you count when they were just Central Lyon. Titles in 76 and 77 were just them. And then as CLGLR, they also have titles in 06 and 2022, with runner-ups in 91, 96, 99, 07, 08, and 2020. They have 27 total playoff appearances. Van Meter has 22. I, for some reason, didn't put their playoff records in there. But what do you guys think in 2A?
I think out of all the I know all the championship games are going to be great games, but to me, this is the premier championship game. You've got 2 teams that are defending state champs. Obviously, Van Meter was 1A last year, but 2 just dominant teams with a lot of playmakers on both sides. Van Meter, Ben Gordon, who Kevin alluded to earlier, the cousin of the Grundy Center quarterback, is a stud for Van Meter. They kind of had a slow start to their game in the semifinals and then got it rolling. And then Central Lyon, George Little Rock, Reese Vanderzee is the name to remember. He's their quarterback, can get it done through the air and on the ground. He's going to be a Hawkeye next year. They were down 14-0 to Spirit Lake and then ripped off 28 unanswered to win that game. And Vanderzee, I believe, had 3 touchdowns on the ground, 150 some yards rushing and almost 100 yards rushing. This is going to be a heck of a matchup. I know we got to make a pick. It's a really hard one to pick. I'm going to pick Central Lyon, George Little Rock, just because I think them being a 2A school and Van Meter coming up to 2A, just giving them a slight advantage, but wouldn't be surprised. I just think this is going to be a great game. And if anybody can make it down to the dome for that one, it'd be well worth the price of admission or watch it on the live stream. But yeah, well, excited to watch this one.
Kevin?
Interesting to me that this is the only class, I believe anyway, this is the only class that has 2 undefeated teams scoring off for the championship. Everything Jay said is absolutely correct for Van Meter and Central Lyon quarterback play, running back play. I have no rhyme or reason, but my gut tells me don't bet against Van Meter winning this thing. Just because, and I look at the other, Van Meter's had a lot of success in a lot of sports recently. And I just think, I don't know, I've just got a gut feeling that Van Meter's going to pull this one out. I don't think the computer agrees with me though, does it, Brent?
What's the computer say, Brent?
Yeah, computer model is showing a little bit of an underperformance by Van Meter in the last 2 games, 9 points less than expected, 2 points less than expected. On the Central Lyon, looks like they're just performing up to expectations. Computers really like Central Lyon all year long. They've had a lot of good quality wins, and Tess in Northwest Iowa, a nice win against West Lyon in week 8. Headline number from the computer is Central Lyon, by 10.
I don't see it being that big of a spread, honestly. I think the winner is going to win this by 7, maybe even less. I'm also going with Central Lyon, George Little Rock. Kind of like Jay said, these guys actually, about 2011, Central Lyon was a 3A program and Van Meter was a Class A program. And fast forward about a dozen years, and they're both Van Meter's not a small 2A. They're kind of middle of the pack in terms of their enrollment. So I could see them being 3A in the next 10 years. Honestly, they're growing like crazy, but I'm giving the edge to Central Line, George Little Rock. They're I think just a cut above, but at the end of the day, Trudeau is a great coach, and I could see them winning too. And they're in our conference down here at I-35, and that wouldn't hurt my feelings, even though I know people love to hate on Van Meter, but it's always nice to see a conference school win. But I'm going with the Lions. Class 3A. I'm excited for this one as well, not because I don't think it's going to be a close game. I just think Williamsburg's really fun to watch, and I think Bishop Heelan, even though they're one of those private schools, pretty cool story with how they've bounced back from a couple pretty down years the last few years. So both teams are coming in at 11-1. Like Kevin said, there's not a lot of undefeated teams left this year. Both of these teams have a loss. Scoring wise, Williamsburg has the edge with 478 to Bishop's 402. Passing wise, Williamsburg likes to pass it a little bit more. That touchdown to interception ratio for Williamsburg stood out. 43 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, only 17 rushing touchdowns. A little concerning for Williamsburg, but hasn't affected them a whole lot this year. Heelan's a little more balanced, a little more heavy on the rushing side. A lot of takeaways, edge to Williamsburg. The return touchdowns, Williamsburg has 9 return touchdowns. That's fumble recoveries, interceptions, kickoffs, and punts. Heelan only has 1. They both punted 38 times. Heelan, though, has a lot more championship experience, even though it's not as recent. 4 state titles and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 runner-ups, not counting this year if they, obviously we don't know the result yet. 36 appearances, 61 playoff wins, just like West Hancock has. Williamsburg has lost in 3 title games. 2002, some of my college buddies played in that game. And then 2017, and then last year in 2022. And then they also been to the semis in the last couple years, 2019, 2021, for 24 appearances and a 33-23 record. What are you guys thinking about 3A?
Bishop Heelan, I was impressed with their defense and physicality in their semifinal game. They were able to knock off Creston, who was, I believe Creston was the only undefeated team left in 3A. And then the Williamsburg game, obviously they beat my Spartans of Solon. Solon committed 8 turnovers in that game. They lost 4 fumbles and 4 interceptions that Williamsburg came up with. Derek Weiskopf is the name to remember for Williamsburg, the quarterback, another Iowa commit. He is a playmaker. He threw for, I believe, 360 some against Solon. And I cannot remember the receiver's name, number 6 for Williamsburg. He seemed like he was making contested catches and running all over the dome in their semifinal matchup. So I thought Williamsburg was by far and away the best 3A team coming into the season. I was really surprised when they got beat by Solon, but like a lot of times, teams that are maybe favorites going into the season, when they lose one, they aren't expected to lose in the regular season. That kind of wakes them up. And I think Williamsburg also kind of piggybacks off of last year's runner-up finish. I know they bring a lot of guys back that were impactful players from that runner-up team of last year. So that's extra motivation for them to want to finish one of these title games off and take home the hardware.
Yeah, I would agree with Jay. And by the way, that receiver you're talking about is Race Heitman.
Yes.
And that Heelan was impressive. I think they've had a couple of impressive wins. They were knocked off Clear Lake. And then they were really impressive against Creston in that semifinal game. But I think Williamsburg is going to be tough to beat in that championship game. I almost felt bad for Solon because, the Dome, and we know this from playing down there as West Hancock and following them over the years. You get down in the Dome, turnovers are killers. And those 8 turnovers, that was way too much to overcome. I've seen teams, when we all have seen teams go down there and you can't overcome 1 or 2 turnovers, let alone 8 turnovers. But I think Williamsburg wins this one by a couple touchdowns.
Does the computer agree with that, Brent?
Yeah, we talked about, I think Garrigan earlier, is the computer underestimating in the playoffs. That's the same with Heelan. They've been underdogs in 3 games, and they've won all 3 games with close margins. 22-19 over Clear Lake, 27-26 over Sioux Center, 16-13 over Creston. On the other side, Williamsburg has just played to expectations. They won against Humboldt, expected 20, they won by 23. Mount Vernon expected 2, they won by 3. And then Solon, based on a lot of turnovers, they were expected to win by 9, ended up winning by 21. Headline number is Williamsburg by 11.
And I could see them winning by a whole bunch more than 11 at the way they're playing right now. Some central connection. We had a lot of central Dutch players come out of Williamsburg. Coach Ritchie has been there a long time. He'd come down to team camp, super good dude. I'm hoping he finally gets a championship. He has 3 runner-ups, and a couple of those semifinal losses were close losses. I'm hoping they get it done, so that's my pick as well. And I gotta throw, as much as I don't want to say this to a private school, but Heelan was winless 2 years ago, and I think they won 1 or 2 games last year. They had a new coach come in, and now they're in the state championship game. So kudos to them for sticking with it and fighting their way back to the dome. So, but I still think Williamsburg's going to get this one. 5A. We have Southeast Polk, the 2-time defending state champions, and then Ankeny, who beat Ankeny Centennial in a good game. Both games were good in the semis. Southeast Polk one went to overtime with Valley, and then Ankeny beat Centennial. I can't remember the score, but it was a 1-score game, I believe. So Southeast Polk is one of the last undefeated teams in the state. They're 12-0. Ankeny is 9-3. Southeast Polk has put up a lot more points, 464 to Ankeny's 312, giving up about 57 less points. Very, very balanced offensively. Ankeny is too, a little bit more on the passing side. Takeaways are even. Ankeny has 4 return touchdowns. Southeast Polk, kind of surprising for as dominant as they've been. They have not had any type of return touchdowns. And 4 less punts. Like I said, they've won the last 2 state titles. They were runner-ups in 06 and 2020. A couple semifinal appearances. Ankeny is the more traditional team in terms of since the playoff era started. 33 appearances with 50 wins to Southeast Polk's 20 appearances and 31 wins. What are you guys thinking in 5A?
So I'm going to pick Southeast Polk. They beat them 58-21 in the regular season. I know Southeast Polk has had some close games. They barely hung on against Valley in the semifinals. Valley scored like less than 10 seconds to go to send that game into overtime in the semifinals, and Southeast Polk was able to finish it off in overtime. And then Ankeny beat Centennial despite being outgained by over 100 yards of total offense. But I think Centennial turned it over. I want to say Ankeny was like +2 or +3 in the turnover department, so that's what won them that defensive struggle of a game. But Southeast Polk, I think, just too much firepower, and it's really hard for me to look back on. I know we talk about previous matches, flipping. Obviously, Solon beat Williamsburg, and then Williamsburg pounded Solon in the semifinals. But Southeast Polk was dominant in their week 2 victory, and to put up 58 points in a 5A game, that's a lot of points. And I look at that Ankeny. The 2 stats that really just interest me on the Ankeny side is how close their total points are, points for and points given up. And then but the really impressive stat for Ankeny is that 26-2 interception ratio. That's really, really impressive for Ankeny. But I'm going to go with the Rams and say Southeast Polk gets the 3-peat done this year.
I would agree. Those 2 semifinal games in 5A were phenomenal. I watched that Ankeny and Centennial game, and those guys banged. I mean, they were after each other, and I likened it to a train wreck. Those 2 were on the same track, and they weren't going to back off. And I saw some hitting in that game that would rival anything you would see at any level. They really went after each other. That was a fun game to watch. but I would agree that with Jay that Southeast Polk, they got a lot of offensive firepower there. Kudos to Valley. I mean, man, they come on after being 0-4 and got themselves, and they give Southeast Polk all they wanted. But my gut feeling is that we're going to see Southeast Polk win number 3, and I think since they went to 5A, no one else has won it with Southeast Polk. I think they continue to do that.
Brent?
Yeah, Ankeny comes in with a record of 9-3. The last 3 playoff games, they've overperformed by 6 points, by 18 points, and by 10 points. Clearly, they're going to need it. Southeast Polk has been the number 1 team, I believe, all year long, as far as the model's concerned. And clearly, they have struggled in the last 2 games, underperformance by 17 points and by 12 points. Headline number is Southeast Polk by 11. Does everybody know why Southeast Polk is the Rams?
No.
In my 20 years of studying Iowa high school football, I learned this year that Rams stands for Runnels, Altoona, and Mitchellville.
Oh, nice.
Mind
go.
blown. That's pretty cool. I never would have. Boom.
He's more than a numbers guy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right, podcast over.
Yep. We can't top that. That's pretty crazy. That's cool. Yeah. Now I'm going Southeast Polk. Jay mentioned that they barely survived Valley in the semis to make it to this round. If you think back to the quarterfinals, they were a half a yard away from not making it to the dome at all. Cedar Falls went for 2 down 1, and they stuffed them. So Southeast Polk, I still think, based on that first matchup, they're just that much better than Ankeny. I think Ankeny closes the gap a little bit. I still think Southeast Polk wins by more than 11, though. The Rams, the Runnels, Altoona, Mitchellvilles are going to get it done. So 3-peat in 5A coming, I think. All right, let's get to Class A, the 3 of us for sure, and we've turned Brent into a Wes Hancock fan, so maybe the 4 of us are most interested in Wes Hancock versus Woodbury Central. Wes Hancock comes in with an 11-1 record. They lost to St. Ansgar in week 3. Was it 3? Was it after the Belmont game?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if it was West Fork was before that or not. Woodbury Central comes in at 12-0. We will be the away team for this game because Woodbury snuck up to that number 1 spot. Point wise, Wes Hancock scored almost 100 more points than Woodbury Central and given up 38 less. Obviously, we know from years past, and this year Woodbury is a passing team, 2,621 yards, 31 touchdowns to Wes Hancock's 562. They have been picked off 9 times, though. Wes Hancock has not been picked off in 12 games, all by Mitchell Smith under center or in the shotgun. Rushing wise, Wes Hancock has the edge there. No surprise, 3,842 yards to Woodbury's 2,041 yards. They do have 36 touchdown runs, so it's not like they can't run. That we saw at the Dome on Thursday. They can put the ball on the ground and run the ball and be just fine there. But they definitely want to pass first. Takeaways are fairly even. We have 4 more at 26-22. Return touchdowns and punts, though, those numbers really stood out to me. Wes Hancock's only punted it 7 times to Woodbury's 22, and we have 12 return touchdowns to their 2. Historically, we have 4 titles going for number 5, 73, 96, and 19 when we were winning one every 23 years. And now we have one potentially every other year for a 5-year span, 2019 and 2021. 5 runner-ups, 86, 87, 93, 11, and 22 last year to that loss. We lost to Grundy Center. And then 6 trips to the semis, 10 trips to the quarters, 1 trip to the second round, and 6 to the first round. Total of 34 playoff appearances with a 61-29 overall record. Woodbury won a state title in 1980, and this will be their 2nd trip to the finals. They were in the semifinals 4 times, including the last 4 years now. 4 of the last 5, 2019, 21, 22, and now 23, but they won, finally broke that mold and got to the finals. 2014 quarterfinals, 2011, 10 and 12. They were either in the first or second round where West Hancock beat them. And then they have a total of 14 appearances for a 19 and 12 playoff record. And again, I say this every time. This is not bulletin board material. We're all going to pick West Hancock here. We're West Hancock guys. So no one needs to slap this up on a bulletin board over in Mobile. It's simply we're all going to pick West Hancock. It's just fun to talk about the game. So what do you guys think about the West Hancock Woodbury Central matchup?
Game of contrasting styles. I think it'll be a fun game to watch. Fun game to call for Jay and I. I just, like you said, Gary Dolphin wouldn't pick against the Hawkeyes. I'm not going to pick against West Hancock, but I think it could be closer than what the computer says potentially. But I do think that, I'm hopeful that West Hancock will prevail, but I do think it's going to be a fun game to watch and a good game to watch. Drew Klunder can sling it all over the place, and he's got the people out there in the positions that can catch the ball. So I think it'll be a good test for West Hancock's defense. But if they can meet that challenge, I think they'll come out okay. But other than that, I don't know what to say about it other than that, because like you said, we're homers, and you look at it objectively, I think it could be a little bit closer than what we think, but I still think that West Hancock can be able to pull it out.
I think Jay.
A couple things I wrote down. First, obviously, I'm going to pick West Hancock because I'm from West Hancock and we're homers, so get that out of the way. But I'll go through an observation from the Woodbury win over East Buchanan, and then a couple observations from the season and some keys to what I think would be keys for either team winning. First, Woodbury Central, I thought their second half defensive adjustments, they were down at halftime to East Buchanan. They made some adjustments defensively that were able to win in that ball game. They really slowed down that rush attack of East Buchanan and got them in some third and uncomfortable situations that East Buchanan just does not want to be in. And then the other thing is, we talk about them being the throw it all over the yard team, but they ran it at a 2-to-1 ratio in the semifinal game. So they are more than capable of hurting you on the ground as well. Zach Butler is a really good running back, and then Klunder can get it done with his legs as well. So keep that in mind as we move throughout the week and when we're watching the championship game. So those are two observations from their semifinal game. Keys to this game. Let me go an observation going into this game. West Hancock has not seen a team like Woodbury Central this year. With a team, we've seen a lot of teams that run out of the shotgun formation, but Woodbury Central is a different animal, and how they like to throw the ball and the quarterback's capabilities and the receiver's capabilities of catching the ball. So that's a big challenge for West Hancock that they haven't seen this year. On the flip side, for Woodbury Central, I think West Hancock is different than what Woodbury Central's seen this year. I know Woodbury Central did beat two really good run-heavy teams in East Buchanan and Logan Magnolia, but West Hancock does have the ability to throw the ball and throw the ball efficiently, and you can see in the stats there, 562 yards, 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, and West Hancock will spread it out in that shotgun formation too. So it's a little unique. I know they beat Woodbury Central, just came off of two really nice wins against two running teams, but I would say that Logan Magnolia and East Buchanan were very limited in what they could do through the air. So I think that's a challenge for Woodbury Central. Keys to the game, I think we'll go Woodbury Central first. If they were to win this game, I think you've got to see for them to win it, they've got to get West Hancock to 3rd and 5 plus. A lot of times get them to 3rd and uncomfortable like they did against East Buchanan. And then I think offensively, Woodbury Central is going to, obviously they want to, but they would have to be successful in being balanced in their run pass game. And that doesn't mean Klunder, scrambling for yards. I think they need to be balanced with their running back, Zach Butler, being successful on the ground. For West Hancock, the two keys I've got written down right now for them, one, defensively, get pressure with your front four and get hits on Klunder. Anytime you can play a pass team and drop 7, rush 4, and not have to bring any extra guys to open up possible passing lanes, you've got an advantage there. So can the front 4 get a good pass rush? And I think there's some players for West Hancock, David Smith, Ray Gretlett, I think have been really good at getting after the quarterback this year, and other guys. But I think that could be an advantage for West Hancock and a big key. Then I think for West Hancock offensively, win first down. So Kevin and I talk about it all the time. Stay ahead of the chains. And I think for West Hancock, 4+ yards on first down is a big, big key in this ballgame.
And if you look at our rushing stats, 8.8 yards per carry for the season. That number can be a little misleading. Woodbury's has 607 plays from scrimmage, and West Hancock only has 487. We've joked all year, like when we finally hit 40 plays running a game, we were celebrating. Then we finally hit 50 a couple weeks ago in the playoffs. We just haven't run that many plays in a game. Usually a West Hancock team will grind it out, 60, 70, 75 offensive plays, mostly on the ground. We have the ball 3/4 of the game, and that hasn't been the case this year. So I think the team speed of West Hancock is gonna benefit us in Woodbury's passing attack, and it's obvious. I mean, Woodbury's coaches are going to watch the film and be like, these guys are pretty quick. They have some guys that can run around. So I can see that being helpful in West Hancock's case. Brent, what's the computer showing for the two teams?
Woodbury Central has 2 big wins over Logan Magnolia, ranked 16th. They also have a 7-point win over number 6, Marcus MMCRU. If I got all the towns in there. And a 8-point win over East Buchanan. I'm really kind of interested in that East Buchanan game because that's a tie between East and West. And in that case, the computer is predicting after the fact a 6-point game. It was actually an 8-point game. So that tells you that the computer has some amount of insight about the East versus West. On West Hancock's side, they have 3 relatively good wins in the playoffs. 17-point overperformance against Starmont, 7-point overperformance against Wapsie Valley, 8-point overperformance against Madrid. West Hancock has been the darling of the rankings ever since week 6, where they were a favorite to beat South Central Calhoun, but ended up winning by 51 points. And that really changed the computer model's thinking a lot. So they've been number 1 since week 6, and the headline number is 14 points for West Hancock.
And we do have a comparable opponent. Woodbury beat Lamar's Gielan in week 4, I think, 43-14, and then we beat them in the first round of the playoffs in Britt 38-22. Do you guys use that to see any insight there on what this game could look like based on a common opponent?
It's hard just because the two teams are so different stylistically in what we do. And then I think anytime you're playing in the playoffs, the competition level gets ramped up. So I don't take a lot from that common opponent matchup this year.
Anything else on the West Hancock game? All right, for fun here, I put some stats together of head coaches and then schools by state titles and runner-ups. I keep scrolling a little bit to get this just right. At the top here, I compiled all the head coaches' records and their win percentages. Mark Sanger's at the top with a 58-4 record, which is 93.54% win percentage. And then you go down to Eric Trudeau, and then you can obviously see the list. Talk about the coaches here a little bit. What do you guys see maybe as an advantage from a coaching standpoint? Like we talked about earlier with having some dome experience. Is there anyone on this list you'd like to see get a title or puts the team at an advantage?
Dome experience, obviously, with Coach Aaron Company. And I always just go back with West Hancock, the continuity of the staff. Everybody's played. It's been the same system since 1970 or 60, whenever Bob came to Britt. It's been the same system, obviously a few wrinkles here and there over the years, but everybody on the staff has been in that system for the most part. And just that coaching continuity. They've all seen different offensive attacks try to attack their defense, and they've surely seen every type of defense under the sun to try to stop the West Hancock wing T offense. So it's a big factor, dome experience and playing in title games and that sort of thing. Even kids that, some kids that may not have played a lot last year, even if you're just on the sidelines, to experience that arena and that atmosphere, you at least have some sort of idea of what the intensity level is going to be like and just the overall feel of the day.
I think that even spills over to the coaches because, Jay and I have both been involved in coaching and deep into the playoffs, and he was involved when West Hancock boys basketball was going to the state tournament in those few years, and we've had the girls in the state tournament for 4 times, and I think just that experience. I know that first year that we went to the state tournament in girls basketball, and you come up against a team that has a coach that's been there a lot of times. There's something to be said about that because they're good at managing those kids' emotions. They're good at managing the atmosphere that surrounds those kids, and that's a huge advantage from a coaching standpoint when you get to those things. And I think you see that when you see these towns or these schools that have tradition, like Jay said, continuity of the coaching staff. Even if a coach retires or leaves, and the people that are there stay and run, and the head coach comes from that program, and they continue to do those things that they were been doing when the previous coach left. I think that's how you get your tradition, and you look at that list of schools that you have there, and there's a lot of tradition there.
Yep, I want to point out Grundy Center's coach Travis Zajac. He has a 76-43 record, but that includes when he was at Dubuque Wahlert. At Grundy, he's 58-5, 57-5, so very similar record to Mark Sanger. Like I said earlier, I'm pulling for Kurt Ritchie in Williamsburg. I've got to know him a little bit back in my Central days. Stand-up guy. He needs to win a title. I'd be very happy for him. Yeah, it's just kind of fun to look at that breakdown. And then down here, I couldn't get the whole thing on my screen. The 14 teams that'll be playing for titles have a combined 30 state championships and 30 runner-ups. And now with this year's 14 appearances, there's 82 title games amongst the 14 schools. So a lot of tradition, like Kevin said, the rich get richer. West Hancock, Central Line, George Little Rock, and Heelan are all playing in 10 or more title games now. Grundy Center's up to 8. So it's kind of fun to see some of that tradition continue. And then a couple schools like MFL and Woodbury Central are either in their first or second time playing in a title game. Woodbury hasn't been since 1980. So 43 years later, they got back to one. And then last thing I wanted to show, I know what I'm doing here. I might have to unshare my screen here because I'm not real competent. Let me do that real quick. I've been doing some research on teams that have been to 10 or more title games. And I put this list together, and it's pretty impressive, especially for West Hancock being such a small school. There's only 11 schools in the history of Iowa high school football that have played in 10 or more titles now, counting this year's title game. And if you look through the list here, it's a who's who. Harlan, Dowling, Emmitsburg, Heelan, Regina, Bettendorf, Central Lyon, Mount Vernon, Solon, West Des Moines Valley, and West Hancock. A lot of these schools are 5A and 4A schools. You got some private schools, which always gives them an advantage. And then you have little Class A West Hancock, who's small enough to be playing 8-man, and we're 10 titles, 52 years of playoff football, and we've been in one about every 1 in 5 years. What do you guys just first time you've seen this list, but what stands out to you guys about the constant success of Britt West Hancock football?
Impressive list, and somebody had said it. I can't remember who it was, but I think it was actually the Clarion basketball coach. He put out a tweet that West Hancock is with their recent success and past success, they are the gold standard of small school, small town success with the football program. And yeah, one of the things that really jumps out to me is I would venture to guess most of those enrollments have increased significantly out of everybody on that list in the last 25, 30 years. West Hancock's has not. I know my wife graduated in 2001, and she graduated with a class of, I believe, close to 80 or 90 kids, and there's about half that in the average class right now at West Hancock. So really impressive run. Heck of a list to be on. You just go down the list there, and there's some major big time coaches on that list that have led these programs, and West Hancock is no different with the Sanger legacy between Bob and now. But yeah, it just goes to show the incredible community we're in, and one thing is, tradition breeds success breeds success, and kids look up to this year's class. I know this year's class, they looked up to those before them, and they always are trying to strive to beat what their idols did. And then the cool thing with West Hancock is a lot of those people that have had success, they're rooting like crazy for the people behind them to come up and do better than what they did. And then lastly, if you look back at West Hancock, you'll see a lot of the same last names on a lot of these teams as far as key players. You got Sangers, Eismans, Smiths, Zuhls, a lot of really similar names. So a lot of sons and grandsons coming up and through the ranks and leading to all the success.
I think Jake Zuhl told me at the Wapsie game, Kane and Kale Zuhl were, I think, fourth generation Britt or West Hancock football players. You have them, then Jake, and then Jake's dad and Jake's grandpa, I believe, all played for the red and white. So, and one stat about this is 16 times a team that beat Britt West Hancock in the playoffs went on to win the state title.
Wow.
So we always have we always play that woulda, coulda, shoulda game. And there was a lot, if you go back up here to Emmitsburg, there were a lot of first round and quarterfinal matchups where those two teams had to play each other, and they were the two best teams in the class more than likely. And the state title was decided outside on grass many times. So our 10 finals are crazy impressive to me because talent is cyclical, especially at the small school level. My brother played at North Iowa Buffalo Center. They were one of those like 1 in 30-year classes, and then they've been kind of down for the most part since he graduated about 10 years ago. And he'll say, like, how the heck are they always this good all the time? And you'd think there'd be a stretch where it's just gonna plummet, and it hasn't done that since the mid 70s. So first state title game was 1973. That game was played at Kinnick on November 16th. Title game number 10 is going to also be played on November 16th, 2023 in the Unidome. So that's pretty cool that this Thursday will be the 50th anniversary of the first title game. Kevin, any thoughts on this before we wrap things up?
I was just doing some quick math here, and if you look at that quarterfinals and better, out of the 34 appearances, quarterfinals and better are the majority of the playoff appearances. So that's impressive. Getting there is one thing, but doing something once you do get there, and got a nice winning percentage, getting beyond that first and second round.
Yeah, 25 of the 34 appearances we got out of the first or second round. I was interested in this times missed the playoffs. Yeah, we've missed it 18 times, but that was 72, and then we won the state title in 73. We didn't make the playoffs 74 to 1983, and then since 84, we only missed the playoffs in 89, 98, 2001, 2004, which I hate to still bring that up, 2008, 2009, 2013. We've only missed the playoffs 7 times since 1984. That's a crazy number in the small school world. We were 2A for a while, 1A, and then we're down in A. So
I wasn't in Britt for all of those championship games. I told Jay at the halftime semifinal game. Of the 10 or 9 at that point appearances, I had been to all but one of them. The 73, obviously I didn't have any interest in West Hancock football in 1973. Two things I didn't care about then is girls and West Hancock. I was 8 years old, but I've been to every West Hancock championship game since then. So, and I know a lot of people can say that, but I didn't grow up in Britt, so that's probably makes me unique in that respect, that I've been to all those games and I'm not a Britt native. So kind of interesting.
Brent, I think we've made a West Hancock fan out of you. What do you say?
It's a very storied program. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, we expect to see you on Thursday at 1 o'clock in the Dome. Is that happening?
Wednesday for lunch, Brent.
Yep, there we go.
I think it's we'll be at the BBG in Britt, the Britt Bar and Grill for lunch on Wednesday around 12 o'clock. So Kevin will pick me up, just stop on Main Street at the State Farm office, and we'll go from there.
Pretty sure it's my turn to buy. So
yeah,
Can we make it dinner instead so I can be there if Kevin's buying?
We got basketball practice to go to, so no.
It can be a late dinner. I won't, get there till at least 6 something. So, well, fellas, I appreciate you guys doing another episode with me. It's championship week. It's exciting. It's kind of sad too because it's the last week of the season, and we love football season. Gives us a lot to look forward to, and it's been another good one for West Hancock. 3 straight years in the finals, 4th in 5 years, which that's just crazy. And then 10th state title game. So Thursday, I believe it's 1:06 p.m. is when they always say the kickoff is. So make sure you can get there. Again, the radio is great. The Iowa High School Sports Network is great. But there's nothing like being there in person, that sea of red that the boys always talk about. So if you can get there, get there. I'll be there. Jay and Kevin will be there. It sounds like Brent might be there. So we'll see what happens. So, all right, fellas, thanks again, and go Eagles.